This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. Your war room for insider news and draft analysis from deep within the confines of Cowboys headquarters at the Star in Frisco.
The Dallas Cowboys select TD Lamb, wide receiver.
And now, your hosts, Brian Broaddus, David Hellman, Bucky Brooks, and Kyle Yeomans.
Welcome into the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. We are here on a beautiful Tuesday and maybe a little bit late because technical difficulty have run rampant throughout the backside of the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. But we are here and we are ready to bring you draft coverage on what is Senior Bowl week. We are 90 days out from the NFL Draft, and well, this is a great week for grabbing all of that information and finding our way to the NFL Draft. Welcome in, everybody. Kyle Yeomans alongside David Hellman, Brian Broaddus, who are the normal cast of characters here on the Tuesday edition of the show. But we had some trouble connecting with Bucky Brooks. He'll be on Thursday. Instead, we have gotten Jeff Cavanaugh to come in out of the bullpen. Just real easy, always ready to come in and pitch in relief. And Jeff, thanks for joining us so quickly. I mean, I know you had a lot of setup to do. I know that snow globe is holding up your phone right now quite nicely.
Well, I don't think that the audience can see that, Kyle, so you're not supposed to mention that.
I'm going to tweet it here in a second. I've already taken a picture of it.
Yes, I have a book on top of a bottle of scotch, and then my phone sits on the book, and then the snow globe holds the phone up from not falling over. But yeah, I never have anything going on in life, so anytime you need me, I'm here, and there's tacos at the door, but who cares if they're going to be cold, you know? Let's do the draft.
Well, look, we're just like the NFL teams that are putting this thing together. Like, sometimes you might not have a combine, you might not be able to watch workouts, you just got to stitch it together with duct tape, and that's what we're doing right here. And I, for one, really appreciate it.
Thank goodness. And Brian's holding on to dear life to his internet connection, everybody, just so you know. So if you hear Brian cutting in and out, that's why. But he sounds great in our ears. And Brian, I know this is a big week for you because, of course, the Senior Bowl is where you get a lot of this information. But how important is this Senior Bowl this year, just based off of the fact that you don't have a combine, or at least a normal combine, you don't have those in-person visits, and this is really the one opportunity that you're going to have in order to find a lot of the information on these various prospects.
Yeah, it's the first time, though, that you'll really be able to have the measurables of these players. And, this past weekend, Jim Nagy and the staff was working through all that. They were going through COVID tests. They were going through isolation. A lot of things are having to kind of go on right now in order to get these players out on the field to hopefully have practice today. I was talking with the team that as they got 12 scouts there to watch practice. It's just it's going to be a lot different. The interaction you have with the players is really going to be limited. And like I said, Jim and his staff have done a heck of a job of getting us to this point. And hopefully they can the Panthers and the Dolphins, we can have practice. We can get film out there, and everybody can kind of maybe look at this as some normalcy. When you watch Senior Bowl practice, that's the best thing in the world. So, getting those players out on the field will be a welcome relief to a lot of scouts who have spent the fall at their home just grinding on tape. To see players actually live, I think, is going to do a lot of scouts good in this way.
Yeah, and you look at the Senior Bowl, I mean, a lot of changes to it already. I mean, based off the fact that this is the first year that it's not at Ladd-Peoples Stadium. Instead, it's on the campus of South Alabama, and it's at a new stadium. It'll be at the stadium whenever the Senior Bowl game actually rolls around on Saturday. It's not open to the public. None of these practices are because of COVID-19 and just limited personnel and media that are allowed in the building as well. It's one of the reasons why we're not down there. Normally, we're in Mobile doing the draft show and having that kind of information gathering, but that's not the case due to the certain climate. But Dave, whenever you look at the Cowboys specifically, I mean, they have had a rich history of going and getting guys from Mobile, and this year they're not even really sending a whole lot of coaching staff down there. It's mostly just a couple of scouts, and really that might be about it in terms of who makes the trip. But how much of an impact do you think this type of different week of the Senior Bowl in general is going to have on the Cowboys coaching staff and front office?
Well, yeah, and I mean, these things change by the regime to a degree. Mike McCarthy made it pretty clear last year that he doesn't think it's all that important for the coaching staff, especially since these practices will be available. You know, they'll distribute it to the league so you can watch the tape of it. You can watch the tape of the game after it's over. So that part's not surprising. I'm curious about the scouting staff. You know, whether they get the same amount of stuff out of it. I had to laugh this morning. I don't know if you saw this, but Jim Nagy had his social people tweeting out the heights and weights and all the measurements of all the guys. And I was like, wait a second, because I've had to get up at the crack of dawn with Brian Broaddus like the last 8 years and go do this myself. So you're telling me I can just get it on Twitter from the comfort of my own bed? Like, I hope that's a change that stays with us, because that's great. But then, and you know, obviously everybody would prefer for it to be normal. But again, like, technology allows a lot of this stuff to be done remotely. So as long as the practices happen, I think the Cowboys will be fine. And yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. They value, like Brian just said, like being able to see guys get live reps is valuable. And the Cowboys have pretty reliably, you know, looked into this Senior Bowl crop. Tony Pollard is probably the best, most recent example of a guy who really flashed at the Senior Bowl. Yeah. Obviously, you know, we don't need to bring up Dak at this point. But yeah, I mean, this carries a lot of weight for the Cowboys, and the proof is in the pudding. They draft these guys all the time.
Oh, Zach Martin too. Remember that?
Zach,
remember
sure.
that glorious Senior Bowl that we were all part of, where, you know, Zach Martin is showing his wares though, and you know, and that's, you know, and Aaron Donald. What a great matchup between those two. You know, and that's the thing I think that Jim Nagy and the staff, they've done a really good job. I know Jeff and I doing radio, we went through the list of the Senior Bowl guys that we were looking for or looking at and excited, and you know, it's a good crop, and that just goes to show you with, you know, scouts can be resilient. Jim and his staff, they didn't take no for an answer. You know, they continue to scout, they continue to evaluate, they continue to invite. They went through all the protocols so we can have a game. That shows you a lot about really what goes on in the scouting community in the National Football League.
You know, Brian, I'm jealous of you just based on the fact that Dave said he got up for 8 years and went to the weigh-ins. Because last year I tried to get him to get out of bed and he wouldn't do it. And he wouldn't come with me to my first weigh-in at the Senior Bowl.
You do that. Yeah, it's exciting the first time, and then like by the 8th time, you're like, well, Brian will have all this written down when I get to practice at 10:30. Like, it's, you know, this is fine.
I think
I should point out. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You go for it. I want to hear what you wanted to point out.
You should point out that Kyle is a snitch. Kyle snitched on you.
I was gonna say that at the break. Yeah, like very uncool, Kyle. But no, hey, that's called paying your dues. You get up at 6:30 with Brian to go to the weigh-in like the first 6 years, and then by year 8 you can sleep in.
Well, I'll tell you a snitching story real quick, and it's not on anybody I work with here, but
don't you do it.
I used to go to the combine, the weigh-ins at the combine, and you'd have to get one of those front row seats. You had to leave at about 5:30 in the morning to get over there to get a seat. And I remember coming down the elevator many a day, and like the Cowboy bus that was parked on the other side was still rocking and rolling with our crew over there. So we did it the right way at the combine. We had everybody was. I will say this though, everybody that was in that bus all night was sitting at the 40-yard line at 8:30 in the morning watching. So that itself was very impressive how that crew used to operate. So yeah. It's a lot of fun doing that.
Not a whole lot of sleep.
The number
in the
of guys
process.
And then the number of guys that go to, and again, we're not going to say any names, Kyle.
No,
but
I'm not saying names.
You go to You go to weigh-ins and workouts at 7:00 in the morning. You'll see some hungover people for sure.
You will see.
You got to work hard and play hard.
No doubt about that. I mean, whenever you look at the job that Jim Nagy has done, and Brian and I were talking about this off air as well. I mean, it's a crop that seems to get better every year. I mean, last year we were excited about guys like Javon Kinlaw and Justin Herbert who were in the crop, and then this year it's Devontae Smith. I mean, you get the Heisman Trophy winner anytime to come to Mobile, and you're going to be really excited. Same kind of thing back in the day when Baker Mayfield was out at the Senior Bowl, and you get another guy like that, and then just another incredible crop of receivers. That's what I'm excited about, not to draft a receiver, but to look at a lot of these DBs and look at a lot of these corners. And I kind of want to go through some of those corners later in the show, Jeff, because I know you're looking at a bunch of those secondary guys and how they're going to match up against those wide receivers. But whenever you look at some of these prospects, Mr. Kavanaugh, who has the most to gain from a week in Mobile? Because if you're Devontae Smith and you're a Heisman Trophy winner, you already have put out the incredible tape. You had one of the best seasons a wide receiver has ever had in college football. And now you turn around and you expect to add to that via a week down in exhibition practices and exhibition games. Who has the most to gain out of this? Is it the opt-outs? Is it the small school guys? Or is it guys like Devontae Smith?
I think it's probably the small school guys are what I would say is number one. For instance, like I'm looking at the DBs, and if you played at a bigger school and you've played against great competition, teams are going to have a pretty good feel for who you are because they've already seen it. But just a random name, Robert Rochelle from Central Arkansas. How about if Robert Rochelle shows up and in practice he locks up Kadarius Toney from Florida and he's able to cover Amari Rodgers out of Clemson? I think the guys who have the most to gain are guys who teams aren't sure that they can do a portion of the game. You know, you've got a guy who is good in man coverage, haven't seen him in zone, don't know if he can tackle. And you've got guys who, I'm not sure about him in man coverage. Like, if you can show something that scouts didn't know that you could do, that can be huge. A linebacker who you haven't seen in coverage a lot. He goes one-on-ones and locks up tight ends and running backs in coverage. That can help you. But I think for the most part, you're talking about guys that are trying to move themselves, like late or mid-round guys who are trying to separate themselves from guys they're practicing with and against. That's what the Senior Bowl is about. And that's why it's awesome for all the guys that commit to it, because what you're saying is, I'm willing to compete. I'm willing to risk some draft stock because I think I'm really good, and I'm going to make money out here.
Yeah, I think Jeff's nailed it right. You know, another name I think about is Melifonwu from Syracuse. You know, and the reason I say his name is he's 6'3", he's 215 pounds. That's what we had going in. And you watch his tape, and we all remember his brother Obi, who was drafted by the Raiders out of Connecticut, who played safety. But man, you're talking about a 6'3", 215 pound cornerback right now. And so how is he going to match up? Are you worried when you see him live? Are you worried about, okay, is he a long, leggy guy? Can he turn? Can he break? Can he adjust? You know, sometimes with those tall guys, you lose perspective of like, okay, is he not quick because he's tall and long? And so when you see somebody live like that, it could put your mind at ease, like, oh, I get it. He's a smart kid. He's a tough kid. But yes, he can move. That's what these practices could tell you. And these teams, the Dolphins, Carolina, they'll do a good job of structuring their practice in order to see the drills where you'll see the movement, the change of direction, and you'll get to see them compete. So that's where the great thing about the Senior Bowl is that maybe some guys that you didn't have a really good gauge on just off tape, the Senior Bowl can kind of open your eyes to some other avenues.
Dave, I think a guy like that from last year was a Kyle Duggar. I mean, a guy who you had good tape on and you really, really liked, but he had a good Senior Bowl as well, and it kind of added to that, and it ended up pushing him up into the top 3 rounds. I can't remember. Was Jeremy Chin also a Senior Bowl representative last year?
I was going to say Jeremy Chin and Kyle Duggar.
Yeah, so
sure.
both of those guys could have been a very high. I don't think Chin had as good of a Senior Bowl, but he was still somebody that was very nicely represented down in Mobile. But I mean, it seems like every year those guys that end up sticking out, David.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we can heap praise on Jim Nagy through this whole thing because, again, like when I started doing this, like you would occasionally get a good player. Zach Martin and Aaron Donald were great college players, but they didn't have nearly that kind of hype coming out of school. And now you look at the type of guys that they're able to get. Devontae Smith's not going to participate, but even getting him to show up, they've gotten Baker Mayfield to show up. So, yeah, and I bring that up to say, like, if these guys invite one of these small school guys, like if a FCS D2 or D3 player is at the Senior Bowl, he's probably pretty freaking good. Ali Marpet is another one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
So,
Hobart, yeah.
Yeah, so this is, like if these guys if they're in Mobile, they can play. And, I'm past the point of being surprised when some of these guys climb up into the first few rounds of the draft.
Brian, from a scout's perspective, I know pretty much the combine is the same way, but the Senior Bowl is a rounding of what you've already found, correct? It's finding those different things, and kind of like what Jeff was talking about specifically whenever it comes to filling in the cracks of what you think about a prospect and what you might not like about a prospect, and those prospects have one final opportunity to maybe show that they can do that. But how much does it weigh, especially in a year like this where you have to deal with so many of the guys that are uncertain, that were opt-outs even, that we've already talked about, but all these scouts kind of piecing this together? How much of a challenge is it from a Senior Bowl perspective in 21?
Yeah, I know it's a big challenge, but, we've talked about this before. Scouts can be very resilient in the way they go about. If you tell them within the rules, this is the interviews, this is the access, this is what you can and cannot do, you'll figure out ways to evaluate. I always go back to, with Al Davis back in the days with the Raiders. Al Davis, he would take 2 or 3 guys every year from the Senior Bowl. That was something that was really, really big to the Raiders back in the day. That, and there's teams to this day also put a lot of weight in what goes on in the Senior Bowl, because what you're trying to figure out is, okay, you take these players out of their element, an Ali Marpet from Hobart, and you put him next to Zach Martin out of Notre Dame in his element. How do these players, is the stage too big? Is the opportunity too much? Or no, do they shine? And I think you could get a lot out of the Senior Bowl, not just because of the competition or the interaction, but you could see how players in various weight classes react to their surroundings. And I think it's a good window through what this player really, really is. And, we always say, I had a bad Senior Bowl. Hey, I just appreciate the fact that somebody would go to the Senior Bowl and participate. We talk about that. Put it out there. Throw it out there. You might be from Central Arkansas covering a guy from Notre Dame, but, if you have some good reps, that in the mind, it's like, I knew that kid could play. I knew that kid could line up and cover that guy. So, yeah, it'll be it's a great week. It really, really is. I don't think anybody gets hurt by it. I think there's some things that can change your opinion in a good way, but you kind of say, okay, trust your eyes on the other stuff. Maybe he had a couple of bad practices, but a good game. There's a lot you can really, really gain out of this game. Not only, like I say, the whole week of evaluation and then the actual game itself.
I love it. There are a lot of guys out there that we're going to talk about in the third segment that you need to keep an eye on, not even just as Cowboys fans looking for the draft, but just in general, because there's a ton of talent down in Mobile, and we're going to talk about it. Practices start today, 11:30 a.m. Central Time. They go to 4. So I think the NFL Network is broadcasting it, and we'll be watching along as well. So go ahead and follow all of us on Twitter to keep up to date. But when we come back, we'll do some Twitter on the 20. We've got some questions about the priority with the Dallas Cowboys and where do some of these players fit in Dan Quinn's system on defense. We'll talk about it next when we return on the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
There's nothing as unique as our eyes, which is why Essilor pioneers ways to make lenses as unique as you. Varilux for super sharp vision, Essential Blue for protection, and Crizal for freedom from glare. 3 cutting-edge solutions in a single unique lens. So whatever your needs, insist on Essilor. Visit your local Essilor experts and find the perfect lens for you. See more, do more, Essilor.
Since 1865, Stetson hats are American-made with pride right here in Texas. And Stetson is proud to be on the field with America's team. Want to show your Texas and team pride too? You can. By purchasing your own Stetson, you can look just like how the flag guys do on field at every home game. Stetson hats, the official crown of all self-respecting Cowboys, and your favorite football team.
Get yours today at shop.dallascowboys.com or at stetson.com.
I'm Jay Novacek, former tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Back in the day, I was the guy who always got the tough yards, and that's why I run with John Deere today. In fact, I have a John Deere 3025E tractor that can handle any yard work I need to do, even the tough yards way out back. So if you have 1 acre or 1,000, John Deere has the equipment that's just right for you. Visit a John Deere dealer today and run with us. We are the official tractor provider of your Dallas Cowboys.
Dear, it's 1908. Don't you think we should get electricity?
And stop using candles to see at night.
It's just electricity lights up the room fast. It's more reliable than candles blowing out, and people seem to love it nationwide.
Well, candles are...
Dear, did you just run into the wall?
Nope. May I have a new candle, please?
Historically, switching to new technology is a no-brainer. Today, it's AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. Switch to AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires compatible plan. May not be in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
Second segment here of the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show here on this Tuesday. Brian Broaddus, David Hellman, Jeff Cavanaugh, I'm Kyle Yeomans. It's time now for some Twitter on the 20. And our Twitter on the 20 question, I don't know if we have the sounder in the back. Chris Beam is not back there.
Twitter on the 20.
Oh, there it is. Oh, it did. It popped up. Wow, it did. Okay, it went. It actually went. Well done, Matt Kent. Doing a great job. Okay, so Caleb says...
Twitter on the 20.
While understanding that defense is the priority, are there any offensive players on day 3 that could potentially surprise the Dallas Cowboys? Specifically, he wants to know at the skills positions. I'm going to defer to Mr. Taco-eating Jeff Cavanaugh on this one. Do you think there are any day 3 guys that the Cowboys could potentially be interested in as a skills position?
Yeah, I think so. I think because you have to look at your entire roster. There's a couple of things that are going to be true here. One, if the Cowboys took a wide receiver on day 2 or 3, the impact that they would make immediately on the Cowboys is probably very, very little. But they also have decisions to make. Guys like your 4th and 5th wide receivers, Devin Smith, Cedric Wilson, and Noah Brown. Like, those guys... Are they going to be on the team? You don't know. So, there's room on this roster for skill position players, for sure. And there might be room for a guy who's one of your 3 top receivers going into the 2022 season. Michael Gallup's going into his final year under contract. So, yeah, I think for sure. And every year you're going to have so many good wide receiver prospects that you could go into the 4th or 5th round and you might find a guy that can be a really good NFL wide receiver. So, yeah, keep your head on a swivel. Know the names of these receivers. The Cowboys are going to have at least 10 picks in this draft, depending on what they do and how these comp picks shake out. Yeah, I think you could absolutely take a skill player.
Yeah, I think the thing, and Jeff's absolutely right, and I know Dave can address that as well. You seem to have an idea of who your top 3 receivers are. You could always, depending on what you want to do with some other positions. Maybe you feel like, hey, well, we got to think about a possible replacement for Michael Gallup going forward. Do you want to develop a guy? Yeah, these drafts are always, the one thing that we've learned over the years is the skill position seems to be one where all of a sudden you get down in the 5th round and we're on the draft show and we're working the draft, and then somebody gets taken and Jeff goes, well, that's a guy I had in the 3rd round. I had a 4th round grade on him, and all of a sudden he's taken in the 5th. So the skill positions can go pretty deep generally. I also feel like, though, that's the opportunity too in that 4th round, 5th round. Look for those offensive linemen too. That where you don't want to sit there and wait till the 6th and 7th round to try and find a tackle. This team has done a pretty good job. Heck, they got a starter at a 3rd round with Connor McGovern, who they had a 2nd round grade on. So they're going to work. They're going to work this board. Not only just for the skill. Yeah, Biotish is another one. Very good. Yeah, you get a starter out of that. So yeah. So I would say the middle of this draft board is going to be more about taking those offensive linemen, or maybe even a defensive tackle or two. I think that's the position that I would kind of focus on if I was a Cowboy fan.
Y'all covered it very thoroughly, but I would just throw in, obviously the Cowboys' needs are defense, but, doesn't the conversation change once you get past, the 4th round, basically? Like, the first 4 rounds are where you're drafting guys who you expect to make an impact immediately, and even that's not a guarantee. We couldn't get Reggie Robinson on the field this year for some reason. Yeah. But so, we always say, it's best player available with a shade towards your needs. But the later you get in the draft, the less I care about my immediate needs. The Cowboys might need a safety, but if a wide receiver that's really, really good slips to the 5th or 6th round, I don't give a damn, because neither one of them is probably going to contribute right away. So for me, that's the fun thing about day 3, is you just pick the best possible player always, because these are more about long-term investments anyway.
Which means that day 3 is going to be a time where all of us have watched, 200 and whatever guys, and it'll be like, all right, who's your best available player? And we'll all be saying our guy for 80 picks in a row until he gets picked. It's where your pet cats end up.
I don't want to give us too much credit, but I think, I guess there's no way to say it without giving us a lot of credit, but that's how Bradley and I situations wind up, though, is a really good player, Senior Bowl MVP. Maybe some people thought of him as their 3rd or 4th round pick. He falls all the way down to the end of the 5th round, and everybody's super excited because he was the best guy left on everybody's sheet. But he's still a late 5th round pick, and sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's also a spot where you could maybe look at a quarterback as well. I think maybe you saw it last year with Ben DiNucci really late in the draft, 7th round. You look at it and you go, oh, look at this guy out of James Madison. It's Ben DiNucci. We thought at the point it was going to be the Washington State kid and Gordon, Anthony Gordon, that was also a Senior Bowl quarterback last year. We thought if they were going to go quarterback, it was probably going to be him. Instead, they went with Ben DiNucci. I think you could possibly see another situation like that again, where it's out of the 10 picks that they have, one of them might be a backup quarterback sitting in the wings if they, of course, don't take a quarterback early on due to various ensuing negotiations in which we will not get into at the moment on this show. So moving on to the next question, Scott Fitz on Twitter says, if the Cowboys don't select a corner at the 10th overall pick, who are some of the corners on day 2 that could fit into Dan Quinn's scheme specifically? And Dave, you just talked about it a little bit ago. If you're drafting a day 2 corner, you expect him to come in, make an impact. That's what Trayvon Diggs did this past year. You were hoping that same thing for a guy like Reggie Robinson. Didn't necessarily get that. But are there any guys that stick out to you, Brian, when it comes to somebody that could potentially fit into Dan Quinn's defensive scheme?
Yeah, the thing that what I'm gathering about talking to people that know Joe Witt, know Dan Quinn, Witt is really, really big on the ability to have a corner that can run. That's important to him. And, he's really big on playing like that deep space. And, he doesn't want to be exposed. Now, say what you want about Diggs and his ability to run and to cover and stuff like that, but you wouldn't say that Diggs is a really speedy guy. And so I think what you have to do is you have to keep your eye on those guys. Now, let's see what a guy like, Tyson Campbell from Georgia. Let's see what Eric Stokes from Georgia. These are guys, Josh Jobe from Alabama. These are guys that are all kind of in that long, kind of rangy build that they like. But how well can they run? I think it's going to be a matter of they're going to be comfortable with Diggs. But whoever they draft in the second round or third round, I think is going to have length, and he's going to have speed. They just don't want to go in there with, you can't just sit there. And that's why, if you look at why Farley would be really entertaining to them in the first round, if they could get Farley, is because he is long and he can run. And that'll be important to this secondary, and that'll be important to Dan Quinn and him going forward. So, you can throw out probably a bunch of names, but if they have length and you start to hear that they ran well and they're talked about in the second round, I would guarantee you those are guys that the Cowboys are going to target.
Dave?
Brian kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but if we're trying to keep it on, if we're trying to keep it on the Senior Bowl, because that's what's happening this week, I'm fascinated by Ifeatu Melifonwu.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I realized what his measurables are, and you can go look, the Senior Bowl tweeted out his official measurables. He's every bit of 6'2.5", 213, big ass wingspan. And we always fall into this trap of comparing prospects to, Hall of Fame caliber players, but it's hard not to think about a guy like Richard Sherman when you hear that, and that's who Dan Quinn coached when this defense was at its best. So
yeah.
I'm curious to see how high his stock rises, because, we in the media are always behind the actual scouting conversation, and I'm sitting here maybe this guy's stock can climb a little bit, whereas maybe other people think it's already up there.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious to see, if he handles himself well in these practices, I bet we'll be talking about him even more than we already are.
Yeah, I'm just gonna tell you guys though, like I was earlier though, just keep an eye on the speed, and it's not that they have to have this guy that's a 4.3 guy. It's important to Witt, the secondary coach. He's going to. They're going, him and Al Harris, they're going to figure out okay, what do we have on one side with Diggs, and what do we need on the other side? I just don't see them having two corners that have okay speed.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be about okay, we can have one, and Richard Sherman was that way. Richard was basically a 4.55 guy coming out of Stanford. That's why he lasted till the 5th round. So, teams are very mindful of the speed. They're very mindful of the length now. I'll tell you what, I keep falling in love as a first-round player with this J.C. Horn out of South Carolina. Everybody talks about Farley and Surtain, but for me, put J.C. Horn up there too, as a guy that you would look at very, very strongly for consideration if you were looking for those top cornerbacks.
Jeff?
I think so. My biggest thing when you talk about corners and Dan Campbell I just got sidetracked.
Mixing up your Dans.
I was thinking for saying that.
Yeah, I was thinking about Dan's amazing speech. I think about it a lot. But we'll go Dan Quinn instead. One of my favorite things that I've read was something that Richard Sherman said about him a few weeks ago, and I don't remember what game he was talking about, but he was talking about how Dan Quinn came into the locker room and they were losing, and Quinn was like, all right, guys, bad news. What we're doing isn't working, so I know you guys aren't built for this. We're playing man in the second half. And they stopped him, and they won the game. And so, I can respect that coaches have things that they're looking for, but I just really hope that they don't care if he's 5'11 or 6'3". They don't care if he runs a 4.32 or a 4.51. Find the players, and for crying out loud, build your defense around the best players you can find. don't try to make sure that, well, this is what I like to do, so I've got to find a player that can do. No, find the best players and be an adaptive coach. That's what I want. So I just want to identify the best corners, put them all in order, and pick them in order. And then, coach, your job is to be really smart. You're a coach. Figure out how this is going to work, put them in position, and let's go.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, man. It's so much fun to watch these kids whose dads play in the league. I got to watch Elijah Molden play the other day. Yeah. I didn't know his dad was Alex Molden, who in my last draft in Green Bay was was picked by the Saints, 11th overall. His kid is a good player. He's 5'10", though.
Yep.
Asante Samuel's kid is a good player. He's 5'10". I mean, these are guys that you can legitimately watch, and you're sitting there going, man, these are good players. And to Jeff's point, if you're not playing the traits game, those kids should be absolutely considered with all these other corners that are going to be drafted. I mean, they're all good players, but there's some teams that get measurable conscious, and I do worry a little bit about with the Cowboys with what's going on. From what I'm hearing about Witt and the type of corner that he likes, it might be a little bit of a focus on, okay, we got this type of corner on one side, I need this type of corner on the other.
Now, do you think the other side would be fitting for a guy like a Caleb Farley? I mean, we're talking about these 5'10" guys. Caleb Farley is not that. 6'2",
no, absolutely.
200 pounds. I mean, he is every bit of the measurables you want in a corner. Do you think he could potentially be there? Because our next Twitter on the 20 question is Bender Bending. He asked, is Caleb Farley elite compared to the rest of the cornerback position in the past? Or is he just elite with this year's group? Because he's starting, at least this guy tweeting, said that he is not liking, he's starting to not like the possibility of taking a corner at 10.
Yeah, I'm not going to call him elite. I'm going to call him the best of the class. It's funny how we go through these cornerbacks, and the kid that was taken at Detroit last year, and he gets banged up, and all of a sudden you're sitting there trying to kind of figure some things out, and but I'm looking at Farley. I'm seeing a good player. Mm-hmm. That there's a side of me that when we were picking at 4. I was nervous about taking him or Surtain or one of those guys. Picking him at 10, a little bit better feeling there. Picking him at 12, a really good feeling right there. But if you're going to take the best corner in this draft and try and project him to be an outstanding player, Farley gives you that best chance. In my opinion, he does. But when you start comparing him to corners in other drafts, I don't think he would be necessarily the top corner in the last, say, 4 or 5 drafts that I've worked on.
I think that's perfectly put, honestly, Brian. And, I mean, there have been other great cornerbacks to come out in that time, but probably because of my obvious connection. Like, when you're talking about, like, a surefire slam dunk, like, elite cornerback, and I hate that word, but it is what it is, I go back to Patrick Peterson. Just like a guy that you're like, he can do everything. He's a slam dunk. He's going to be a Pro Bowler as a rookie. You can't miss. That's what, and that's exactly what Peterson was. And those guys just they aren't there every year. And I don't think any cornerback in this class is that guy. I'm with you. I started to get real nervous about picking in the top 5 if they were going to pick a cornerback, because I'm not sure either of these guys is worth it. But down at 10. Doesn't bother me. Patrick Surtain doesn't bother me at 10. Caleb Farley's fine. It scares me that, he'll have gone a long, long time without live reps by the time they draft him. But, I liked what I've seen from his 2019 tape enough that I'm comfortable taking that risk. Especially, again, you're down the board a little bit, at least a little ways from where we thought they might be. And yeah, I mean, I would say I feel I'm comfortable with him or Surtain saying that they're the best in the class. I don't have a strong opinion about it either way, but I feel a lot better about it at 10 than I would have higher up, for sure.
Let me ask you guys a question. would you, with Detroit having a new general manager and head coach, would you send the 10th overall pick for Jeffrey Okudah to Detroit?
Newer's always better. Newer's always better. Give me the cheap guy that I don't like. What am I giving up for Jeff Okudah?
You're giving up the 10th overall pick. You're going to get a corner that we all thought was a top 3 player last year. Yeah. And he's only a year removed from the game, from the draft. You giving the 10th overall pick off to make sure you go get one of the best corners. You go get a corner that you thought was elite.
I think I would do it.
He didn't have a great rookie year.
Even after he didn't have a great rookie year, I would still do it. I think I would still do it.
The other thing, I'm such a cheapskate. Like, years of cheap labor mean everything to me. I want all of the team control I can get, and Jeff Okudah is already a year toward needing a contract extension. And if he
makes more.
But you also got it. You do have him on the 5th-year option though too. You can use.
Yeah, you got the 10th overall pick on that option.
Yeah, let me go ahead and.
But you're talking about potentially picking a corner that you're not in love. Well, Dave sounds like he's in love with Farley at 10.
No, I'm not in love. I feel just right. Like, I feel like if you tell me that Caleb Farley,
are you guys scared? You guys are scared because Okudah didn't have a great rookie year because he was hurt. Is that what you're telling me?
Hell yeah.
He had a bad rookie year.
What's wrong with that?
Are you guys telling me that Okudah is not a better player than Caleb Farley or Patrick Surtain?
12 months ago, I thought he was for sure.
Yeah, he was a better college player.
So you're saying you're wrong right now then about him? You're saying you guys were wrong about him?
Brian, we're wrong on so many players. It's the way this works.
I'm just asking. I'm just asking. The question was about elite corners.
Yeah,
guys.
Good question.
Yeah,
because I think if you were to plop these corners, I love the word plop, by the way. If you were to plop these corners into last year's draft class, I think to me, Surtain, Farley, Horn, they're all right there battling with C.J. Henderson for the right to be picked.
I would agree with that.
In my world, somewhere, I think Henderson went. Did he end up going like 9? But
he
in
went
my
9
world,
to Jacksonville.
Okay. See, in my world, all those guys should be battling to be picked somewhere in the teens. And that's just kind of the level of corner. And you're right, I had no doubt. Jeff Okudah, to me, was awesome prospect. I'd have to really go watch what happened in Detroit. And I think part of it was probably that he was told, hey, you're a top 5 pick. Welcome to covering the best receivers in the league one-on-one. And they play a bunch of man in Detroit. And so it's probably just really, really hard. So I think it's a great question. I just have to go back and watch him. Because, yes, I thought he was a better prospect than any of these corners. And it wasn't close.
If Jeff Okudah was there at 10, we'd be doing backflips.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, what? We could say that every year. You could say that every. I'm
just talking about corners and where like Farley and Surtain and those guys. And I think you guys have got him right.
All right, how about this? I think I like Farley and Surtain more than I liked C.J. Henderson. Am I crazy for thinking that?
No, I think they're right in that interchangeable.
I liked Henderson better than that.
Henderson was
one of my top
guys.
Henderson. Yeah.
That's it. I don't know. I mean,
you're not crazy. I think that it would be. I would have to figure out the order. I think Henderson would go right in there with Farley, Surtain, Horn.
Unless you draft Brian, obviously, if you nail the pick and the guy's a stud from day one, it's different. But otherwise, draft picks are like cars. Like, the minute you drive them off the lot, they start losing value. So, I've always rather hang on to the shiny new pick with no mileage than the one that it still runs great and it could still be a great car, but it's already got 5,000 miles on it and it's a little bit dinged up. I'll take my chances with the new one.
So just for reference, everybody, you want to talk about technical difficulties that we had early in the show? You guys aren't going to believe this, but the fire alarm is going off at this very moment in the Star. So,
hell yeah, bro!
Yeah. So the technical
you want me to quarterback
difficulties continue.
This thing?
No, you might have to because they just came in and told me that we're going to have to evacuate the building. So
yeah, so if you have to leave,
a security guard.
Cool.
So I don't know if I should do that or not. I think I might just stay here. So we're gonna
draft show is more important.
Yeah, I agree. We're gonna take a break. When we come back, we've got some dogs that we're going to talk about on the Senior Bowl circuit and some guys that are going to be available here over the next couple of days to see. I know we can already hear them. There's so many dogs in the background a little bit. There's an omnibus of those dogs in the background. We're going to talk about it next when we come back here on the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
We're back with a tasty treat that's sweeping airwaves and taste buds. It's new Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda. Let's take a listen.
Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda's here. A new combo that's music to my ears, okay. Let's play. Cream Soda and Dr. Pepper time. Pour it in a glass of ice.
Music to my ears and mouth. New Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda.
A delicious duet.
There's nothing as unique as our eyes, which is why Essilor pioneers ways to make lenses as unique as you. Verilux for super sharp vision, Essential Blue for protection, and Crizal for freedom from glare. 3 cutting-edge solutions in a single unique lens. So whatever your needs, insist on Essilor. Visit your local Essilor experts and find the perfect lens for you. See more, do more, Essilor.
The Cowboys way, where 16 Hall of Famers and 5 championships shows us what success looks like. Where turkey is always the second best part of Thanksgiving Day. Where we are all defined by one single thing, the Star. Where we as fans know it's our job to keep the tradition going. Bank of America is proud to be the official bank of the Dallas Cowboys and to support the quest of living life the Cowboys way. Copyright 2020, Bank of America Corporation.
Dear, it's 1908. Don't you think we should get electricity?
And stop using candles to see at night.
It's just electricity lights up the room fast. It's more reliable than candles blowing out, and people seem to love it nationwide.
Well, candles are...
Dear, did you just run into the wall?
Nope. May I have a new candle, please?
Historically, switching to new technology is a no-brainer. Today, it's AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. Switch to AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires compatible plan. May not be in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
Couple minutes here of the draft show, and yes, we are still here, thank goodness, as the alarm has been shut off. And I liked one of the comments on the Periscope stream said we're all on to something as the draft show because they're trying to shut down the convo because we're giving away all the draft secrets. That's what's happening at the moment, but you can't slow us down. This alarm can't slow us down. Dave Hellman, we've got Jeff Kavanaugh, Brian Broaddus, I'm Kyle Yeomans. Final couple minutes here. Of course, Senior Bowl week kicking off today in Mobile. All of the measurements have already been taken. They are out on the social media of the Senior Bowl. Go check that out. We'll give you tons of updates throughout the week as well on our various social media accounts. But we talked a lot of specific offensive names in last week's Tuesday show with Bucky and Brian and Dave, and kind of went through a lot of the guys on the offensive side of the football. And of course, we're very defensive heavy this year via the draft process for good reason, because the Cowboys obviously need a ton of defense. But guys, whenever you look at the list of Senior Bowl talent, and Jeff, we'll start with you on this one, which level of the defense has the deepest amount of talent? Are we going to go with the defensive line, linebackers, secondary? If you had to pick one of the 3 units that's deepest down in Mobile this week, which one would it be?
Oh, that is a cheater question, Kyle. I really like them all, so I'm just going to pick the one that I want to talk about the most.
Okay.
There's a couple of guys we haven't talked about a lot on the draft show.
I like it.
The American team at the Senior Bowl, I really like the secondary group there because they got a bunch of dudes that I'm a big fan of. We've talked about some of them. Tyree Gillespie, the Missouri free safety, I think he's a fun potential, say, 3rd-round pick. The Florida State safety, Hamza Nasirildeen, And, boy, he is a monster. So if you wanted to say, hey, I'm going to move him to weak side linebacker and we're going to party, I would say let's get it.
I'm right there with you.
But I
saw him yesterday, Jeff. I watched him yesterday, and this is a guy who had a torn ACL, missed all but 2 games in 2020, and then he comes back and plays NC State and just tears them up, and then he goes against Duke and plays even better in his second game against Duke. I really liked him overall, as Jeff's camera just falls down off of his snow globe, but I really liked Nasiruddin and what he brought to the table out of Florida State.
Am I still alive?
Yes, you're there.
Yes, you are.
We got you.
Hey, guys. Now I want to talk about my Central Florida dudes, because my Central Florida dudes are dogs, okay? Central Florida's got a free safety named Richie Grant, and if you have not seen Richie Grant, I would advise you to see Richie Grant, because he is now in my top 3 safeties in this draft class. Richie Grant is a real-life free safety that can get sideline to sideline, and when a running back breaks free right up the middle, Richie Grant has zero fear about the collision that's about to take place, and he wants to be part of it. I like Richie Grant a lot. They also have a corner named Aaron Robinson at Central Florida. He plays the slot for them. He's not the best cover corner in terms of you're blanketed all the time, but if guys start pulling away from him, you get to see speed, and you see tenaciousness, and you see a dude that tackles. So, Central Florida, they got dudes for you in the secondary. And those are all guys that if I'm a Cowboy fan, I'm looking at and I'm saying, all right, talk to me about what we're going to do in rounds 2 and 3, because I think there's a lot of really fun secondary players that I would love to see added to this team.
Brian, you really liked Richie Grant as well out of Central Florida, correct?
Yeah, Jeff's absolutely right about him. I think that, and even late last night when I was studying him, it was one of those things people asked me, where would you play him? I said, you can play him up or back. It doesn't matter. There's tape of him playing in the middle of the UCF logo, ball going all the way to the outside against Tulsa. And he's running, dead sprint, covering, and gets in position. The ball hadn't even been thrown, and he's moving. He read it that fast. And, I just like the guy's toughness. He's a physical tackler, sometimes a block down tackler, but he will throw his body around. The one thing you notice is when he huddles up, his uniform is dirtier than everyone else's uniform. And that tells me a lot about the kid. Everybody else's uniform looks nice and clean. His is completely a mess. And that tells me a lot. And so I am a big fan. I think he's a true free safety. But I also think, if you want to put him down in the box and let him tackle and let him take on runners and toss sweeps and stuff like that, that son of a gun will fill and make a play for you. Really, really good football player.
Dave?
Okay, I'm glad y'all didn't take mine, because I wrote a preview piece for DallasCowboys.com yesterday, just sort of diving into who all's actually down there and who's actually going to participate. And I'm excited about these linebackers.
Yeah, and
Browning? You like Baron Browning?
Okay, there's about 6 of them that pique my interest. We know Baron Browning. He played great in the playoffs. Good for him. Chaz Surratt, Bucky Brooks last week on our show talked about him a lot. Carolina, I think he had 6 sacks for Carolina this year, which is very intriguing to me. See what a guy like Devin White can do in Tampa Bay's defense when you let him blitz. And then on the other team, obviously, we talked about our guy Jabril Cox last week as well. Maybe the only good thing about LSU's defense this year. And a name that I'm really interested in that I want to know more about is KJ Britt out of Auburn. All SEC, first team All SEC last year, 10 tackles for loss as a junior. Only played in 2 games this year. He had to have surgery on his thumb in October. So this is the first live action he's going to see in, 3 months. And he checked in today at 6 flat, 239. Mm-hmm. And the other reason this is exciting to me is, again, I'm curious to see what that means for the type of linebacker that Dan Quinn might want, because all I can think about with him is he drafted Deion Jones, who turned, undersized linebacker who turned into a great player. He did it again with Duke Ridley, who never really hit that potential. But again, you can. Oh, thank you. Wow, he even went to LSU, and I screwed up his name. Thank you, Jeff. But like the archetype is what interests me. Like Dan Quinn is not afraid to draft shorter, smaller, faster linebackers, and there's a few of those guys in Mobile. I just listed off a few of them, but Surratt is really interesting to me. Britt is really interesting to me just because he's coming off of this injury. So, and none of these guys are like, first round targets, by the way. So these are all guys that the Cowboys could maybe find on like day 2, and that's really exciting to me. So I like that a lot.
Hey, Kyle, and there's another group you need to kind of keep an eye on, and maybe not so much for Cowboys' sake, but, just you're going to have to sort out what's going on with Jordan Smith from Alabama Birmingham as a potential defensive end linebacker. Rashad Weaver's another one from Pitt that is kind of that 6'4", 265-pound guy. There's some good defensive ends in this thing that people are going to have to say, okay, is he a linebacker? Is he an end? That's the great thing about the Senior Bowl, because these coaches will play these guys at a couple of different spots, and you can kind of get a gauge of really how they fit best for your scheme, whether you're an odd scheme or an even scheme, with a 4-3 or a 3-4.
I got one more too, and Brian, it kind of touches on that. You have talked on our show already about Levi Onwuzurike, right?
I have. He's one of my favorite players.
Shame on me. I'm behind you, obviously. I didn't realize he was an opt-out.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that he didn't play in 2020, and so he's down there. He's going to compete, and I wish we got to see more of that. I wish more of these opt-out guys were doing stuff like this. So,
some of them are. Michigan's got a couple of guys, Ambry Thomas and Nico Collins. There's some opt-out guys that are going down there and getting in the action.
It's very exciting to me that a guy, because the thing about opt-outs is you're scared about not knowing what they look like after a year away. Well, if you've got these 3 practices of Levi going against badasses, that makes me feel a hell of a lot better about drafting him.
This guy, Dave, I'm glad you mentioned it, because he is my ideal under tackle, that 3 technique. Guy plays in the outside shoulder of the guard. I mean, this guy, he can make some things happen at the point of attack. When you watch him, he's super active. He does a nice job of finding the ball. He gets over, he finishes plays. I mean, Washington's got a couple of guys. Like I mentioned Molden. They've got a guy, Tryon, the defensive end, number 9. That's a good player for them. Levi here. I mean, they've
Keith
got
Taylor
Washington
is another corner that
some,
Washington has down there.
Yeah,
too.
I haven't watched him yet, but
I wasn't as impressed, but he's there.
Yeah, if you've got some access to the University of Washington tape, whether this year or in 2019, you can make some really good use of it.
Onwuzurike, by the way, and Dave and I talked about this earlier, if there were to be a Dallas Day, which I don't know if that's even going to happen because of COVID-19 and whatnot later in the draft process.
I believe the rules are that no team can have any player at their facility at all ever leading up to the draft.
Okay, well, there you go. Yeah. So no Dallas Day. Never mind. I was going to say he would have been a guy.
Allen, right?
Yeah, he's from Allen. Yeah. Allen High School. Yeah. He was a former Allen Eagle, so he's down the road. He would have been at least in that discussion, but not this year because of COVID-19.
Well, he needs to be in the discussion of defensive tackles you're going to draft.
Agreed.
That he needs to be in that
Let's do
mix.
it.
Yeah.
I'm all on that train. That would be awesome. If you take him in the 2nd or the 3rd round, I don't know if he makes it to the 3rd, but you take him in the 2nd at 44. I think he's a
2nd round player. Yeah. I think he's 2nd round. Yeah.
This happens to me every single year, so I'm not surprised at all by this point. But you look at your options at 10, you're like, okay, Farley, Surtain, those are good players. That's kind of, that would be fine. But I start getting really excited when you start pitching me on who could be available in the 2nd round. Yeah. I'm like, holy crap, that guy might be there? There's been about 8 of those guys where I'm like Onwuzurike is a great example. You're telling me I could get him at 44? Yeah. That's way more exciting to me than the options at 10. I just, that happens every year, though.
Just take him at 10.
Hey, guys, there you go. Can I bring up one more guy? We talked about guys that can maybe help themselves, and I don't know if you guys will agree on this player, but it's on the offensive side of the ball. Alex Leatherwood from Alabama.
Yeah.
And I want to say, Alex Leatherwood, like going back to Alabama, I can understand it because of the way the draft fell last year. But I want to see if Alex Leatherwood is in that mix of the guys this year, the top guys. So these tackles we've talked about with Slater and Sewell, and the Darashaw from Virginia Tech. I want to see where Alex Leatherwood comes out of that. Again, from Alabama. Keep an eye on him, the type of week he has. Him and Deontay Brown, his running buddy from Alabama, is there as well. I mean, just a massive guy. So 2 guys that if you're looking for offensive linemen, 1 tackle, 1 guard, and kind of play that. I'm really excited about seeing Creed Humphrey, too, from Oklahoma, the center. So just kind of keep an eye on some of these offensive linemen, too, and see where they're going to fall in the mix when we get to start stacking these boards.
Isn't that fun about the Senior Bowl? Because we can start it talking about guys from Grambling State and Northern Iowa and how we're excited to see that. And then at the end, you're talking about Creed Humphrey from Oklahoma and Alex Leatherwood from Alabama. Yeah. And you get to talk about the big school guys and the small school guys. They combine. You get to have all kind of that competition and getting in the thick of things. And I love that about the Senior Bowl. It's always been one of my favorite events, and I think that continues even in a year like this, and I'm so glad that they will have it. We'll have plenty of updates throughout the week from the Senior Bowl, even though we are not there in Mobile. We'll be back on Thursday, 10 a.m. Jeff might be on that show, should we not be able to get Bucky Brooks back on for Thursday. But for today, that's going to be it.
Hold on, just because he didn't get to show up now, I get kicked off my show?
Yeah, we'll see.
That's how a rotating cast works.
We've done
if Bucky doesn't come back, I'll volunteer. I'll volunteer to come back if Bucky doesn't come back.
I'll play some golf. It'll be fine.
Well, Jeff's upset about it. But for Matt Kent in the back, for Jeff Kavanaugh, Brian Broaddus, and David Hellman, I'm Kyle Yeomans. Thanks for listening. We'll see you Thursday on The Draft Show.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!